It was 106 years ago today that the 19th Amendment was ratified, giving women the right to vote. But that milestone didn't guarantee equal access to the ballot for all women. American University's Dacey joins us now to look back at that fight, Washington's role in it, and how it still shapes voting rights today. Amy, good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right. So Washington was the backdrop for some of the biggest demonstrations in that fight for women's suffrage. What happened here in D.C. that really helped change the national conversation and build momentum for the 19th Amendment?
Well, I think it was the perfect backdrop, and the suffragists knew to use the geography of Washington, D.C. to get people's attention. You know, the 19th Amendment was definitely a constitutional breakthrough. As you said, it did not end the suffrage story. But the best part was, you know, there was the incredible march that happened the day before Woodrow Wilson's inauguration, where thousands of suffragists marched down Pennsylvania. It captured the attention of the Capitol, the White House, Pennsylvania Avenue, Congress, the Treasury, really the nation. And so I think they truly were able to leverage Washington, D.C. Well, ironically, Washington, D.C.'s own residents were disenfranchised with the right to vote.
So we just talked about this. You just mentioned this. Once the 19th Amendment was ratified 106 years ago, what did it actually mean for women here in Washington? And how quickly were women able to exercise that right at the ballot box?
Yes, well, the amendment removed sex as a constitutional justification for denying the vote. It did not eliminate other barriers. We saw African women, for example, Native American women, they were disenfranchised continuously through things like face poll taxes, literacy tests, white primaries, intimidation from Jim Crow. So it still was some time. Now, I think the 1965 Voting Rights Act was an important part of the larger story to help with so much of this going forward. But also, you know, I think what you saw was in some places it was immediate. When Tennessee became the crucial 36th state to ratify, you suddenly saw people voting in that presidential election in various states, but it wasn't universal. It wasn't in all 50 states. There was still some of those barriers that we mentioned that were more legal in status and were based on state-by-state barriers.
All right, there's an interesting connection to today because D.C. residents can vote for president, but still don't have full voting representation in Congress. How does D.C.'s current fight for voting rights fit into the larger history of suffrage and representation in this country?
Well, I think it's a clear example that, you know, the fight can still continue on. And D.C. isn't voteless in a literal sense. But the issue is that residents still don't have voting representation in Congress comparable to the residents in the 50 states. So while they vote for president, vice president, and the 23rd Amendment gave them 3 presidential electors, this limitation is congressional representation, which we know is crucial to make sure that they have the resources and the representation. So what you see is the right to vote doesn't necessarily mean the right to representation. And I think that's some of the struggles that DC sees remaining and why the fight goes on here to make sure that there's representation in Congress that has voting rights within Congress to really make sure that they're advocating for the citizens that are residing in the district.
Yeah, and I'll leave you with this. A lot of talk about some of the fights that are going on today with a number of different things that you've mentioned, whether it's voting rights, suffrage rights, how women are being treated, how different people are being treated. A lot of those fights are still going on today, kind of similar to what was going on back then and out throughout time. What should people be paying attention to or even doing to make sure that we keep the country moving forward?
Right. Well, I think exercising your right to vote is essential in order to keep it. I always say it's not enough to say you're going to vote. People need a plan to vote. Make sure that you're registered. Find out where you're voting if you have the ability to vote by mail, to vote early. Put on your calendar when you're going to vote. Make a plan. Put reminders down. You have to exercise the vote in order to keep it. So I think that's important. I think it's if you're living in the district, advocating for those rights for representation. And then I think, you know, as citizens, we should remind others to vote, encourage others, because that's the way that we keep, you know, this ability to be represented. That's the way we make sure that everyone has the right to vote in these upcoming elections.
All right, American University's Dacey, thank you very much for waking up with us and having the conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a great day.